Hi there, I'd like to welcome you to today's Talking Credit podcast. We're very, very lucky to have the man, the legend that is Chris Sanders. Welcome, Chris. Thanks for joining us this morning. Are you okay?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Very well.
Good, good. Well, thank you once again for joining us. For those that don't know Chris, does anybody not know Chris? No, everybody knows Chris. So for those that don't know Chris, Chris is head of accreditation at the CICMQ. Also a very well respected and highly experienced international credit and billing manager. So, I think that certainly from however long I've known you, Chris, the wealth of experience that you have and the way that you share it with people quite openly, is a credit, no pun intended, to you and your your methodology and mindset. So
Thanks, Dan.
What I wanted to do today, I know that you very, very kindly in July did a podcast with us on the Talking Credit
I did.
basis. You fortunately had the much better looking Jane Bray than me, but
I did, yes.
Sorry for that. But at the same time, what we try to do with these Talking Credit podcasts is to share best practice and insights and maybe a little bit of advice, if possible, for both our listeners as a podcast and also our viewers on YouTube as well. So one of the things I wanted to start with was that that you, since the beginning of lockdown, the first lockdown, and where we all started to become a lot more aware of COVID back in March 2020, you, within 3 days, you were setting up a basis of whereby a community could get together to share best practice and topics of advice and everything like that with the 11s call through the CICM. Could you give us a little bit of an introduction to that, if you
could? The 11s, that was a monster that we created in March, as you said. It was the idea of Sharon Adams, actually, one of the guys that I work with regularly. Both with the CICM and outside as well. And she said, well, because the 20th, I think it was the 23rd or something, the actual lockdown happened and of March. And within 3 days, we started doing these 11s. We've done 95 Zoom calls now.
What are you going to do for the 100th? Have you got any plans for the 100th?
Well, it's not long, actually. It's not long. We've got a few. We've already done a year. Obviously, we got through the year. We hit our 2,000th delegate next week. Put it this way: we normally on these calls now we get somewhere between sort of 30 and 50 people on these calls.
Really good.
So we're gonna crash through the 2,000 barrier next week. We've got another CICMQ accredited organisation on next week. I'm talking about what they've done. We've had 3 so far. So 95. So that'll be number 96, and then we've got a few. We're basically doing them every 2 weeks. So we have what we call the breakfast. But it was weekly. Well, we originally started doing 3 a week.
Yeah, I remember.
And we started with a breakfast session, then we did the 11s, then we did a lunch and learn, and the lunch and learn became the bite-sized ones that we've done. So we've recorded and done a number of these sorts of sessions, just like half an hour on best practice, and includes things like remote working or stakeholder management or planning or whatever. And we've run those as well, and we've now got about 15 or so that we run. So if anybody wants to run one just for themselves, then we'll do that for them. But we've done a lot of them, and it's been fantastic because we share, everybody shares so much stuff, and it's been great for us as well because everybody's been able to sort of keep up with what's been going on, and we've probably spoken to more people last year than we would have done anyway.
So the plan is to continue with that every fortnight.
Yeah, we're carrying on. They've been so popular. They're going to carry on regardless of what else we do. We're going to carry on doing those. And what we've done is we've set up in the next sort of 6 or 7 of them for the next sort of 12 weeks or so. We're booked up now through to July with different organisations. So we've got organisations like ARCO coming along. We've got Allied Bakeries coming to talk along, and they've done some amazing stuff at Allied Bakeries. Kerry Blackaby is their credit manager there. We've got Gavin Jones from Imperial College London.
Right.
He's coming along. We've got Hilti. They're coming along as well. So we're lining them all up. We recently did Equinix. We've had Adecco, and we've also had Waitmans, and what was the other one? Oh yeah, how could I forget? Tarmac. Tarmac were the first ones that we did this year, and they were big winners at the Credit Awards this year, and we were really pleased that they were on our virtual table at the awards, which was great fun.
And they're all focused, aren't they, on credit, but necessarily it's not just textbook stuff, is it? Like you say, it's
and that's the thing. You know, being a consultant, you know, I guess there's two sorts of consultants. There's those that learn stuff out of a book, and then there's those that learn it by doing. And by joining these calls and stuff, you learn from people. I learn from people because they're doing it.
Yeah.
And that's what makes such a difference for us. So I do it for two reasons. One, because, you know, it's great. It's a great community, and we do have fun as well while we're doing them, to be fair. But we also learn an awful lot, and from a consultant's perspective, which is what I do for a job, you know, and we sort of make a joke about it. You know, we just sort of shamelessly stealing each other's ideas and passing them off as our own. And as a consultant, I've been doing that for years. So everybody does it, and that's essentially what it is. Sharing knowledge and sharing experience doubles it. Yeah, and it grows, and we've seen, you know, back in the early days of CICMQ, when we first sort of saw people doing huddles, and the first huddle I thought was at Veolia years ago.
Right.
And you know, huddles when, you know, everybody gets around a flip chart and sort of gets everybody together once a day or once a week or something. And now everybody does it. You know, and it's interesting because you see organisations sort of taking what they've learned and learning from others and doing that, and that's what the whole of the best practice network and the 11s is all about. If you can, you know, as I used to say, if you can take one thing away from these things, then it's absolutely worth attending. You know, and there's so much stuff out there now on the web that, you know, it's difficult to find the good stuff. So I always think it's good to learn from the people that have done it.
Yeah, and I think it's concise, isn't it? And it's not that it's taking too much time. You know, there's a good area of fun to it, and like you say, that community, and you know,
there's a couple of things that we did that we didn't want to do. We didn't want to make it rigid.
Yeah.
So you don't have to register. You just turn up. If you can turn up and watch it, the whole thing, that's great. If you just have to leave halfway through, it doesn't matter. You know, we're very relaxed about it. And it's not, we just record it. Thankfully, nobody said anything they shouldn't so far.
Really? Charles Mayhew hasn't said anything that he...
Oh, he hasn't, surprisingly. But yeah, so we record it and then just literally bang it straight out there, and it's exactly as you see it. There's no, you know, we have a chat at the beginning and the chat at the end when the recording's finished, and that's when we let Charles Mayhew say things. But during that time, so it's completely relaxed, and really the focus is on the credit manager and what they've done and how they've done it, and we are very lucky to have had some really remarkable credit people on, including yourself, Dan, obviously. We had some really great people on it, and the sessions have been really good. But interestingly, when you look at the views on YouTube, the ones that get the most views are from the credit managers.
Yeah.
So the ones with the largest views at the moment is Tarmac. That might be because they're, you know, multiple award winners now, but the ones that the first one, yours actually did very well, and not you're in competition, of course. You're not in competition, obviously, but it is nice to get views, right? So yours did very well, because it was the first one that we recorded, and it's been on there for ages, so, you know, people have been watching it. But the ones that have got the most views are the ones from credit managers themselves.
So they're really learning something.
Go and watch other credit managers and find out what they do, and that's what's been. Those are the ones that are really popular.
Yeah.
If you're an operational credit manager, then they're available to you.
Yeah.
So yeah, just ping me on LinkedIn and we can get you in there.
And we'll put some links up on this after. Well, on the YouTube post and everything like that, so they can do so. So I think where I wanted to move forward to from that, Chris, is where you've then taken it to the next level, is that you have, and correct me wherever I'm wrong here, is that you've put together a credit manager's playbook.
So it started off with Playbook 1 last year. And Playbook 1 was all about, okay, so what do we do now kind of thing, because the lockdown had happened and stuff. And I think it was about a month or so after the first lockdown. And what I wanted to do there was to share with as many people as possible what other credit managers were doing, so that they could realize that they were not alone, and the impacts that this pandemic was having on them, from everything from you know, what do we do with credit assessment, and how are we working from home, and what do we need to do with our teams, and et cetera, and also what industry generally was kind of feeling, and how difficult they were having, and what industries were good, bad, and indifferent. And so that was Playbook 1. And it just and I did 3 on the bounce, actually, one a month. And
Okay.
and then I wrote one for the end of last year, and then the latest one, which is Playbook 5, came out on the 25th of February, and that was really trying to say, right, now we kind of at that time there was beginning to be this this view that at some point we were going to come out of this whole thing. So what do we need to do? Right, and I was trying to sort of steal a march on what credit managers should be thinking about. Going forward. And again, it was very much a consolidation of all the stuff that everybody else had been talking about. So shamelessly stole it and actually put it into a document. And it turned out that it was, you know, the COVID-19, because it was 19 things that you needed to do.
Wow.
And it was that sort of came out, as I say, in February. We did a launch for that, and we've done a couple of things since. We've done polls on it, which ones people think the most important, and you know, so we've had lots of sort of feedback on it, which has been really good. And we actually ran a session as well.
Sorry, if we were to then focus on that, so you know, I appreciate there's 19 different things that you know, we'll put a link to this. I won't joke too much, but I'm not going to say the full link, because we could be here, you know, for quite some time. People aren't going to have a chance to write it down. So we'll put a link to this on the YouTube, where on the YouTube post, where you can actually go and see the full 14-page document and keep up to date. I suppose any other future editions that occur as well. But one of the things that I found quite interesting were that you then ran some polls, if I'm right in saying so, Chris, and looked at the 6 things that people felt were the most important going forward.
That's right, yeah. 19 is a bit difficult to kind of get your head around, really.
Yeah. So if we look at then the feedback that you shared, that seemed to be the most important to credit managers out there, the 2, and I'm going to group these deliberately together, the 2 that came back to be the most important, the most, you know, the highest things to focus on were nurturing a high performance team with 26%, and also tying that into what came second, which was the well-being and flexible working. So could you give a little bit of, for the people that are listening and watching, what was the feedback in those 2 that is in the playbook, summarizing what people need to be aware of?
Yeah, well, it's interesting that organizations used to pay lip service to people before the whole pandemic thing. They usually had it in, you know, if you had a mission statement or a set of 5 things that organizations wanted to do, it normally included customer service, growth, people, and a couple of other things, but generally it's like 5 things that every mission statement had, and it was usually on the wall somewhere. People was always one of them, but organizations generally didn't really understand what their people wanted. They didn't understand the personal circumstances of their people, for example. And what the whole lockdown and pandemic thing has done is forced organizations to do that. Because they were, everybody's going to love working from home. Well, not necessarily, right? And there's lots of reasons why you don't want to, and it might be, you know, as we've heard quite a lot about, you know, you could be, you know, you've got loads and loads of kids at home, and you haven't got the time. You're homeschooling, or you could be in an abusive relationship, or you could actually live alone, and your whole social life is about working in the office.
Yeah.
So all of these things sort of organizations had to really start thinking about this.
Yeah.
How are we going to help our people get around this? You know, and it's great if, you know, like me, I'm very lucky. I've got an office in my house. I've got an office. We bought the house because it had an office, so it's great. I can come in here, shut the door, and I'm locked away. But, you know, lots of people sitting in their bedrooms on the kitchen table, and it is difficult. It is difficult for people to work for many people to work from home. And the whole well-being, flexible working thing is something that organisations have really begun to take notice of. You know, like spending too much time on Zoom. I heard an organisation last week was saying, well, Zoom free Friday. You don't have any calls, any Zoom calls on Fridays anymore.
Wow.
They just
one
don't do
extreme
it.
to another, isn't it? It's
Yeah. So which is for, you know, which is actually quite a good thing. I mean, I don't know about you, but I spent an awful lot of time on Zooms, not least because there's 95 of them last year. And if you add up all the Zooms that you've done, you've probably done 1,000 or so plus. Yeah. You know, and so things like that. And then looking at the well-being of individuals and the fact that, you know, understanding people, you know, do they want to come back to work? And we've also done surveys and things with I've done 2 now actually with our sort of Zoom community, if you want to call it that. And 80% of people want to have a hybrid workplace, and people are still talking about it, and there's still votes happening on LinkedIn. You know, what do you want to do? Do you want to work from home, whatever? But 80% generally want a hybrid workplace. So that means they want to work sometime in the office, sometime at home.
Still harder than I expected, though, to be fair.
But 0% on both of the ones that we did, and we've got 100 people now. 100 people, and 0 of those want to go back to working in the office full time.
Wow.
But what's surprising is that although, you know, 80% of people want a hybrid workplace, 50% of organisations still haven't decided what they're going to do yet. And you think, really? Why is that? You know, if your staff want to do this, and you want to keep your staff, which is, you know, really what we want to try and do, is to keep the good ones. You've got to start making decisions about what you're going to do. Yeah. And this is where organisations are going to fail if they don't give some degree of certainty to their people that they are going to be working in this way in the future.
So give them a plan of what.
Yes, people, you know, everybody. It's quite funny, really, because when you start talking about change, everybody says, "Oh, yes, I love change. I love change." You know, nonsense. You don't, right? What we like is certainty. We want to be able to say, "This is what's going to happen." Yeah. Right. And organisations that haven't got that certainty nailed down yet are going to struggle, I think, in terms of retaining their people. And you know, you've got Goldman Sachs is at the other end of this, at the other end of the scale, where the boss of Goldman Sachs saying that, you know, that working from home is an aberration. We're going to get everybody back to the office. Google a couple of days back actually said that they're going to be an office-centric environment, which means that you're going to be moving back towards the office. You can apply to work from home. Right? You can apply to work from home. Facebook said that yes, you can work from home, but if you're going to work from home and you work in the San Francisco office, you're probably going to get your pay and benefits changed, because obviously you're not traveling anymore, so therefore we're going to cut your pay and benefits. Right? So there's all of this kind of stuff going on. But the interesting organisations that have really come out and taken a real leadership role in this was in July 2020, which is like 3-4 months after lockdown. Yeah. Siemens said you can work from wherever you feel comfortable forever, right? Which basically could be beanbag in Starbucks or your bathroom. It's up to you.
I suppose it's then not about where and what, it's more about the output that they're getting from that.
That's right. And it's but what you've got to do then is, as a business, you've got to start thinking about, right, but how am I going to measure people?
Yeah.
Am I measuring them on the output? Yeah. Am I measuring them against targets? Yeah. What am I measuring them? Am I having to check them out? And there's now software and stuff like that where you can actually sort of track the clicks on people's laptops and stuff to find out whether they're working or whether they're watching Netflix. Yeah. Yeah. So and the other one, Spotify came out and said let employees keep working remotely, and now they can choose whichever country they want to work from on the same pay and benefits. So there's 2 completely different organisations there. One's completely digital organisation, which is Spotify, and the other one is like an old-fashioned pre-war massive electrical engineering company, and they both come up with these the lead taking the leadership role, and those are the organizations that people are going to want to work for. And there was even an advert today on LinkedIn that says that I can't remember who it was now. It was a credit management recruitment company saying, you know, that the whole of the UK is now your recruitment pool, is now your talent pool. It's not just, you know, where you've got your office. It's wherever you can get them from. And we've got people on our calls that, you know, living in Birmingham, and their offices are in Glasgow, for example.
And that would have
you travel there twice a month.
Yeah, and pre-March last year, you know, I'm not to say that there was never that opportunity, but far less,
significantly less. Significantly less. And the other end of the scale is the people that don't want to work from the office. As I've said before, are those people that are probably, should we say, the more mature, that have taken them 25 years to get the corner office, and suddenly it's been taken away from them.
Yeah.
And the trappings of power, which is what I believe that the CEO of Goldman Sachs is going to miss, right? Because he's of a certain age, shall we say, and he's obviously the CEO of Goldman Sachs, and he wants to have the trappings of power. You know, the two secretaries and the corner office, and, you know, all of that kind of stuff, and the management by walking about, which is another thing that managers like to do. You know, so surveying their territory, as it were.
Yeah. So how does that, going back then to the nurturing a high performance team, then how can you work from what you've seen and your experience? How can you work remotely and still nurture a high performance team without having them there?
Right. Well, there's three fundamental things that you need, and this is taken again from the organisations that we work with on CICMQ and others. There are three fundamental things that you have to have for a high performing team. The first thing is, you've got to have motivated and engaged people. So motivated and engaged people is, you know, it's a little bit more difficult to do that now.
Yeah, remotely. Yeah.
Having said that, you know, if you've got a people strategy that talks about, you know, how you motivate people, the training and development you're going to give them, the ability to make decisions for themselves, to be part of the decision making process, to work on things that they don't normally work on, get them engaged and motivated in their work, rather than just sort of focusing on a screen and banging away on a screen all day, or picking or speaking on the phone. Get them to do different things.
Yeah.
So a people strategy, so that it outlines what you want to do for them as a team, and also what your expectations are of them, right? So it has to be a two-way street. But a people strategy and motivated and engaged people are the things that you need first of all. If you haven't got motivated and engaged people, you know, you're never going to have a high performing team. So it's figuring out ways that you can do that.
As an employer, maybe, I'm being really honest, I think that for those people that worked for me from home pre-March last year, maybe it would be fair to say that I didn't really have a strategy for motivating them from home. The motivation was all about what we could do together as a team, and what incentives could we put in place, and a nice place to work, and, you know, having the right tools. So I suppose it's a pain in the bum now to have to change that. That's what you need to do in order to get a best from your team.
That's right.
That's always what you've always done.
The four, it's interesting. The four things that people want out of a job, right? The four things that people want out of a job are having a good boss, having a good working environment, working in a good team, and being recognized for doing a good job. Now, three of those things, or four of them probably, have had to change in this last year. So it is more difficult. And that's definitely a recognition. It is more difficult, but it's not impossible. If you look at what organisations like Tarmac have done, and Waitmans and Adecco and others, you know, the way that they've adapted to this new environment is something that is fantastic. And all of the stuff's on YouTube. You can watch it. So people strategy and motivated and engaged people is one. A plan and a common cause, understanding a good sense of direction, knowing which way you're travelling in. And having
as a company or as an individual or team, they need to be involved in the whole strategy of the business and where it's going.
Well, right. If you're looking at a company strategy, right? A company strategy, it is all about having that company strategy relatable to the people at the bottom of the.
Know how they're going to affect it, and how
as a credit controller going to impact that?
Yeah.
That, and so everything that you do as an organization, and certainly from a stakeholder management perspective,
Yeah.
and a planning perspective, you've got to make sure it all relates somehow to that. And there's a couple of reasons why. First of all, it makes sure that you're pointing in the same direction that the company's going. And also, when you come to sell your strategy to the senior leadership of your organization, they're not going to argue with it if it's already sitting on the wall in their office. Yeah. Because that's the company strategy. Yeah. So you immediately get a degree of buy-in. But the most important thing, it has to be relatable. So you have to understand that how you're going to do it. How does that be the string that you've got? If you pull it, does it actually move? Right? It's like having a link to it somehow. Yeah. And that's really important. So having a common cause, and the common cause is also important because, and we come across this a lot, where organizations just have too many KPIs, and as a result, they don't really achieve any of them. Right? And the worst I came across was an organization that had 283 service level agreements just in the customer service department, and there was a whole team of people that just sat there and measured them. Didn't do anything, just sat there and measured the damn KPIs. But then you look at it from the other side of it, and we did some work with a large oil company some years back, and we managed their whole credit function on just 3 targets. The whole credit function, across the whole world. 1,200 people.
They know what they're doing.
Exactly. Right. Yeah. It was very, very clear. This is what we're going to do. So a common cause is critically important. And of course, you can't achieve the results that you want to achieve by yourself. You've got to get the whole organization somehow behind you to do that. And that's where stakeholder management comes in, and managing your stakeholders as best as you can. Yeah. So that's something that is really important.
Yeah. So I mean, if we thank you for giving us that insight. So then if we move down to the 3rd and 4th, because you just mentioned that there as well, was that stakeholder management, as you've just said, and also creating a credit aware organization.
Yeah.
Probably fitting together. So can you give us some of the feedback that you found that's in the playbook?
Yeah, a credit aware organization is something, whenever we do our consulting work, whether it's international or UK or wherever it is, a credit aware organization is an organization that understands the impacts of poor credit management.
Yeah.
And a credit aware organization is an organization where you have created an environment where the business understands how important it is and the impact that each function has on credit management. So, and lots of organizations try to do this, but generally they don't do it very well because they try and make it too complicated. Okay. So I did some work with one organization that wanted to have, and they had the measurements around free cash flow, right? And working capital this and free cash flow that. And it's great. Yeah, that's fine. Everybody kind of understood what cash was. But then they had this unbelievably complicated formula, right, that you needed to actually work out to see what bonuses you were going to get. And we asked the finance director, this is a big organization, right, a global organization. We then asked the finance director, so this formula that you've got, how does it work? And he said he didn't know.
Okay.
Right. So we thought, right, okay, so it's not really going to work if you don't get it, and you're the guys that created it. How the hell are the guys further down? You're the salesman, the credit controller.
Deliberate thing. Maybe that's what they don't.
Well, and so what we do, what we say is, well, and it's a little bit like when I did some work for one organization, I said, well, let's cut to the chase here. If you, as a salesman, have debt greater than 180 days at the end of the year, then you're going to get your commission clawed back, right?
That's certainly going to focus their attention, isn't it?
Yeah, it did. I got crossed off a lot of Christmas card lists that year.
Yeah.
Having said that, though, it worked, and the bad salespeople, the salespeople that were really dreadful and just sold to anybody that would take it, ended up leaving the business because they might have had good revenue, but the value of that revenue was because a lot of it just got written off.
Yeah.
And so we took that. So we've taken that now to the next level. And we now look at that in relation to league tables. So if you're going to get your stakeholders on board, then and what you want from stakeholders and people like salespeople and customer service and stuff like that, you want the customer service people to work on the queries that are going to bring money in. You want the salespeople to assist you in resolving the queries. If you create a league table environment, then and because nobody likes to be at the bottom of a league table, if you have create a league table environment, then people will start to change behaviors. You can't just sort of bang do the nuclear option and implement it straight away. You've got to go, it's got to come in over a period of time, and you've got to say something like, well, in 3 months time we're going to be publishing these league tables. In the meantime, we'll work with you to reduce the numbers as much as possible, and then you publish them. And you get the shock says, well, you're not actually going to really publish them, are you? Yes, we are. And again, you have to be a little bit brave. But what it does is it creates an environment where you've changed the behavior of certain elements of the business so that they begin to understand the impact that they have by selling to those people, to not resolving queries, to being poor in terms of not filling out your credit management, your credit application forms accurately. But you can have league tables for pretty much everything. Right.
Whereas before, it was someone else's job to worry about. So
yes, that's right. Yeah, because and lots of cases it's that you sort of say, well, I'll fill the form in, but don't worry, so and so will fix it.
Yeah, exactly.
So I'll send it in, but the idea is you start to do that, then it does change and it does drive behaviour, which is what you want when stakeholder management. You want to do that, and by doing that, people begin to understand the impacts they have, and then begin to create this credit aware organization. What we did when I was working at Shell, I was there for a little while, and we implemented the 3 fundamental KPIs. The one that we actually said was the critical one was day sales outstanding. And the day sales outstanding one became a target for every salesman in the business.
Brilliant.
So the DSO was a sales target as well.
How long did that take to implement, though? Does that, like you said, something that you can?
It's not overnight. No. But when it starts to, you've got to sell it, right? You can't just sort of implement it. You've got to sell it, and you've got to work with them to make it work and make it happen. And you introduce it over a period of time, and then you start to publish it, and so it's not something that you can't go straight in with a nuclear option and say, oh, by the way, your DSO is this and it's dreadful. But when you've created it over a period of time, I think it took us probably about 18 months, I guess, from the point where we said we were going to do it to the point where it became completely ubiquitous across the whole organization, and everybody absolutely understood it. We ended up, one of the ladies that I work with now, actually, Jenny, she runs she helps us run our workshops. She actually won the Credit Management Awards prize back in 2009, I think it was, a while back now, because she trained something like 2,500 salespeople in Shell, and the training course was actually called Credit for Non-Credit Professionals. So that she was training all the salespeople so they understood the implications of what they were doing. And then we introduced the league tables, and then we introduced the DSO targets, and it worked dramatically. In some parts of the organization, DSO was the overdue debt was virtually nil.
But I mean,
which for an organization like that is pretty remarkable, really.
Yeah, but I mean, you're mentioning dates there like 2009, etc., etc. I mean, how in regards to the playbook and the environment that we find ourselves in now, is that the basis of whereby companies have really got to, that maybe didn't buy into that then?
Right. Well, if you look at Tarmac, right? Tarmac was an organization. We started working with Tarmac in October 2019. Right, when we did the workshops and stuff with them. Okay. And I introduced the ideas of league tables back then, right? And there was like, whoa, don't know whether, I'm not sure about that. There was always a little bit of reluctance. There always is to do those.
Yeah.
And they started to introduce them at the beginning of 2020, right? They did their first cash challenge, and then they started to introduce the league tables at the beginning of 2020. During 2020. They had the league tables were the key driver for their debtors, the way in which they manage their debtors. It used to take them 35 days to resolve a dispute before the league tables. It takes them 5 hours now.
Wow.
right? And their debtors position literally fell off a cliff last year because they were focused so much on this. So their debtors position has improved dramatically. Again, if you look at the YouTube channel, the CICM's YouTube channel, it's in January we did the first one with them, and they talk about league tables, etc., etc. And everywhere that I've implemented league tables, and I started implementing league tables back in the 1990s. When I had a proper job, I was the head of credit and billing for cable and wireless, and we introduced league tables there as a way to drive the salespeople to change behaviour as the salespeople, and everywhere that I've implemented them or I've recommended them to clients, they have worked everywhere.
Wow.
But it's the way in which you do it. You can't just sort of bang implement.
Very much like from a sales
your way up to it.
You know, where I've worked in sales organizations before, and you know, you get an incentive for hitting your target a week before the end of the month, and for going so much over, and that sort of thing. Are they a similar type of thing for a credit, whereby rewards?
Yeah, what league tables can help you do is to smooth out those spikes, right? Because what you don't want is a month-end spike. And if you look at organizations like Waitman's, for example, it's a solicitor's practice in Liverpool, they're also recorded and on there as well. They introduced league tables. They also introduced a thing called billing assurance, which is very telecoms based, revenue assurance, where they check and they managing the billing process. Because they found, when I did some work with them a few years back, I think it's 2017 actually, I did some work with them, and we looked at the whip to bill. You know, how long does it take from the work in progress to actually getting the billing done? Because the shorter that is, the better.
Yeah.
And so they introduced this billing assurance group, and they've now got a billing assurance group attached to the credit management team. So they're working together much better now. But they introduced this whole thing, and one of the reasons why they wanted to do it, because they found that 83% of the billing happened in the last 3 days of the month, right? Because of the spike. Everybody thought, oh my God, got to get the billing done, right? And in the last 3 days of the month. And that's the same with sales. You know, the same with sales is that they're billing and billing and billing. And I'm not saying that many salespeople will raise a bill at the end of the month and then raise a credit note in the following week, right? That doesn't happen.
Never
obviously.
heard of that.
Never heard of that. But what it does is, but by having league tables in place, if you're then introducing league tables for credit notes, then that comes out straight away.
It's only going to have that.
See that kind of thing happening and people doing it. And that's what we found when we were doing it with this particular organization, when we started to lose some of the salespeople because they were doing just that. So we introduced a league table for credit note values, and we found that there was a significant number of credit notes coming through for a few salesmen in the first week of the month. And suddenly all of that just disappeared. So and it then had the benefit of then smoothing out the billing cycles and stuff, because what you want is, you want a nice, smooth, even balanced approach to it, rather than having these horrendous spikes that everybody's got to work with all the time.
Yeah. I suppose, that's like you say, in terms of creating this organization that is not only just focused on sales and revenue, about the other side of it, whereby you're focusing on the basis to collect and deal with queries and
exactly. And when you're looking at queries, one thing that organizations don't really understand is the cost of queries either. Because if you think about it, you produce a query and it's got to get resolved. There's an awful lot of different people touching it. And every single touch point is an expense somewhere. Right. So the only department really that understands the cost of a credit note is the department that raises it, because they've got bodies having to do it. But the trouble with a dispute is it spreads across the whole organization. So you've got salespeople involved, you've got customer service, you've got marketing, the pricing guys, etc., etc. And what you don't really appreciate is the cost of that credit. Right. And the cost of rework to get it fixed. We did some work with one client. They found that because they had to send a truck out to fix stuff as well, it cost them $3,000 per dispute. And they had 6,000 of them in there on their books.
And is that looked at in terms of when you're actually putting together, the gross profit in a sale? Just not part of the overhead at all, is it? The cost of sale?
No, because you can't quantify it. You can't. It's really difficult to quantify. We did some work when I was in Shell. We actually tried to figure out what the cost of rework was, and it was about 7 times more than the cost of a bill. So, to produce a bill was relatively low. But it depends on your billing processes and stuff. Lots of the solicitors' bills are very expensive to produce because they're all manual. And you've got hours and stuff like that in there. But we found that it would cost us about 7 times more to correct a bill than it did to produce a bill in the first place. And that's because the number of people you had to touch and people had to sign off and sitting on desks and then waiting. The other cost, of course, is you've got to wait for the damn bill to get paid because you're waiting for the credit note to be produced, and they're not going to pay it till they get the credit note, right? So you got the cost of credit on top of that as well. So it can be quite a lot of money, but people don't sort of recognize that. You've got getting it right first time really does help. But if you can't, then measure it, do it on a league table in some way, and then you're forcing them, like our friends in Tarmac, 30 days to 5 hours to get a query resolved. That's what you want. The quicker you can get it done, the much better you are.
Brilliant. Okay, smashing. Thank you for that. So if we then go to the fifth one, which we hear a lot about, but I think it's worth mentioning because we've had the feedback back on it, is that 17% of people said managing remotely was something to focus on.
Yeah, that's right. And I think one of the things that we found in lockdown is that we're not very good at it. And unfortunately, we're getting better at it. But it's still a struggle for some organisations and some managers to manage remotely.
What are some of the tips then that can you share with us? What you've heard. How can you manage more effectively remotely?
Well, there's all sorts of different things that organisations are doing. Instead of it's changing the way in which you measure people is one thing, and allowing people free time. There's one organisation that allows people free time, so that their expectation is between 12 and 2, I think it is, during the day. Organisations know that you're going to be getting up earlier, working later, etc., because you're there. Your office is suddenly in your home, so they do recognise that you're going to be working longer hours. And I know that my son, for example, he works significantly longer hours than he did before, because he just wanders past his laptop, as we all do, and think, I'll just sit down and check my emails when you're making a cup of tea at 9 o'clock at night. So that happens a lot. But what some organisations have done is they say, right, we're going to put 2 hours during the day, which you can do whatever you want. You can work on your emails, do the project you're interested in. You can do this. We don't expect you to have calls during that time. You can go for a walk with a dog if you want to, or you can have lunch. It's up to you. Right, but there is a free time during the day that you don't have meetings or things being called into your diary. Right. And as I said earlier, some organisations have said Zoom free Friday. We don't do Zoom calls on Friday. We don't do team calls on Friday. You're just there just to sort of mop up from the week and do things that you want to do during the week. But managing remotely is also about providing the support for your team as well and being available. Okay. And some managers, and there's a couple of managers that I know, they leave their Zoom open, so they go on mute and they have their camera off, but they leave their Zoom open. If you want to join a Zoom call with your boss at any time, you can literally, it's like walking into his or her office. You click on this link, you can go into the office, and you're available between these times.
I've not heard that. Brilliant.
That's a really good idea, and unfortunately, not a lot of people do that. One of the things that you've got to be as a manager, which you're not to a degree with the whole lockdown thing, is be more visible. It's very easy to become, like with your stakeholders, become invisible. If you're not there seen walking past the corridor, then you don't bump into people in the street or bump into people at the coffee machine. Having that being available is something that's important. Measuring people slightly differently, and setting boundaries for what you do. We don't expect you to be working beyond 5 o'clock. We're not going to set Zoom calls before 8. We're not going to, all these sorts of things where you're setting boundaries for people, and people need to have those boundaries. One of the other things that we find as part of the Zoom call thing, the Zoom holidays or whatever they're called, is free time and time just to be able to just to have a chat with your colleagues as well. And be visible and available is something that the organisations want. And when you're on calls and things like that, managers need to improve the way in which they actually come across on Zoom calls and things like that, because we still see managers like this.
I wonder where we're going to go then.
or like that, and on every call you're on, there's always somebody like that, right? And you just think to yourself, well, can you not see yourself in on your camera?
Yeah, step it up.
Yes, set it up properly. Have a light source in front of you, not behind you. Do all of the sort of basic stuff. Again, we ran a whole 11s on this. How to look good on how to engage on a Zoom call. One of the other things is to be you can see I'm quite articulate and I gesticulate a lot, but you have to do that when you're on Zoom, because you've got to sort of to be able to make a point. Otherwise you're just like just a talking head, and you don't want to be a talking head.
Yeah.
You want to be sort of seen to be sort of gesticulating and passionate about what you do as well.
Yeah.
So getting better at remote working, and also when you're having team meetings, something that I found that was important when I do workshops, etc. It's always great when you're having team meetings, you have your camera on.
Yes.
Right? And that way you can actually sort of see when somebody is not I don't know, not sort of not themselves.
Checking emails.
They're checking emails, or they're looking a bit miserable and stuff like that.
Okay, I suppose.
And then contact them afterwards.
Type of
scenario. You can actually see whether people are miserable or down in the dumps or whatever, because they're quiet, or they're a little bit, they're a little bit down in the dumps, or they're not feeling happy, and then contact them afterwards. And we've seen organizations setting up WhatsApp groups. I've got a WhatsApp group with my team, the guys that I talk to all the time, all day, every day, that we're pinging each other, which is great, which is why I leave my phone down here when I go to bed at night. But things like that, being available, and also, training and development doesn't stop. You should allow people time to do stuff. And one of the things that I said, especially now, is much more important, because they don't have that social interaction with people anymore as much as they used to. You have to recreate that somehow. And the other thing is you've got to also try and recreate training and development. If you're going to run workshops with people, do some training and things like that. Make sure you get a group of people together to do the training. If you've got a project or something, get the people engaged in doing the training and stuff like that, which is one of the benefits of doing, for example, the CICMQ program, or doing the cash challenges and things like that. We get loads of really great feedback, because they've not worked in a team together doing the workshop and doing the post-it notes and all that kind of stuff. They haven't done that before. And doing something different breaks it up as well, and getting them to do different things rather than just sort of looking at a screen and answering the phone, because when you're doing that day in, day out, you need some variety. And also, people, when they're looking at flexibility of work and they're looking at how they feel and stuff like that, they don't want to be just banging away on phone calls and stuff. They want other stuff to do. And this is part, when we're looking at being a people manager now, the trends going forward are yes, there are still people managers required, but not everybody can be a manager of people. We've got to move into different specialisms, and we're seeing that more and more now, people moving into various specialisms and changing the role of what they do into much wider than credit used to be. Just for the collections or credit assessment. The credit management community is changing in terms of the way that it's operating now, and that's something that we've got to be ready for, I think.
Yeah. Smash it. So I suppose that leads us into the last one, which I've highlighted, which was have fun. So 70% of people responded on that to be the focus, which I'm very passionate about. That you shouldn't necessarily put on this. When I was starting, I suppose, my career, it was very much about being conservative and having a phone voice and etc. and being a certain way, conservative and etc. And I think that's very. I've noticed that for a long time now, in the fact that you need to be more genuine and people then connect better with you and that sort of thing. And actually, we all want to have a bit of fun. Not I can't think of anybody that doesn't want to have fun, but we tend to put up this facade that, okay, we shouldn't be having fun in front of our customers. Be sharing that with us, and we've got to be this brochure based person. So I think that's really lovely to hear in terms of what I'm passionate about, and the fact that the people clearly on the calls and the credit managers also think the same thing. You shouldn't necessarily.
Yeah, and we do have fun. It's interesting. There was something on LinkedIn about a month or two ago, where somebody posted on LinkedIn, what type of drink do you enjoy the most as a refreshment during the day? And there was like black tea, white tea, coffee, hot chocolate, milk, whatever, right? And people were voting on this. And I thought, this is good. So I clicked, cup of tea, love a cup of tea.
Yeah.
So I clicked cup of tea, and then I looked down some of the comments, right? And on there was somebody from so we say a large firm, right?
Yeah.
A large accounting firm, should we say? And I won't say any more than that. A large accounting firm, not in the UK. They were in the States, I think. And what they said was that this is not the sort of place that you should be putting this kind of thing on LinkedIn, right?
Okay.
And
right.
And then everybody else was saying, lighten up, for God's sake, don't be such a grouch.
Yeah.
And then and I put at the bottom, I said, right, I wonder I wonder who would like to work for that guy or the bloke that put the poll on, right? And that's the difference, isn't it? You want to have a bit of fun. It can't all be just about work.
Yeah.
And one of the things that we found on our calls is that part of the fun of doing the Zoom calls is before we do the recording, obviously. We have quite a lot of banter goes on at the beginning, and it's just good fun, and it's just good to catch up with people and take the mickey out of other people's haircuts that have clearly gone wild during the call, or all sorts of other different things, and we just have a laugh. And we also have as you probably know, we've also got a mascot as Zoom 11's mascot, called Boris the Bulldog. And Boris the Bulldog has grown up with the Zoom calls. He's owned by Natasha Whitehead from Hayes. And Boris comes on our calls regularly. He was actually on our virtual table at the Credit Awards as well. And my goodness, he's a big boy now compared to what he was. He was like a little puppy before, and now he's like this great big bulldog. But we do have fun, and it's important that you do that, especially when we're in the situation that we're in.
Just quickly before we wrap up, what I just wanted to do, I'm going to put you under a bit of pressure here, is so what's your sort of predictions from a credit manager's basis? What are we going to see in the next 3 to 6 months? I mean, can you see anything changing? Is there new stuff going to be in the playbook that you're sort of already starting to see that you think will be in the next edition? What is there any predictions that you can make?
Right. That's a good question.
There might be any answers no, but
I can't see, to be brutally honest, I can't see anything changing markedly about going back to work and going back to the office and anytime soon. I just can't see that happening. We've got 80% of people on a hybrid workplace. Many organizations are still talking about continuing to work as they are. They're happy with what they're doing. They're getting the numbers that they wanted to get. Sometimes they're getting much better numbers. The staff are, the people, they don't have to commute, and there's lots of positives to that, and we're really, and so from my perspective, I've been working from home since 2002, I think. So for me, it's just kind of normal. But I think that one thing that we have got to be aware of from credit managers' perspective is we have to give more certainty to our teams. We've got, decisions have to be made about what's going to happen next. Companies can't just sort of say, oh well, we'll wait another 6 months, then we'll make a decision, because people don't want to put their working lives on hold for 6 months waiting to see what the organization is going to do. They'll move, and it's always the good people that will move. Right, the ones that are more marketable, the ones that are brighter and they want to do stuff. And my son changed his job recently because he didn't want to work in the environment that he was in, and now he's changed his role and he's much happier, much more flexible. He's not under so much pressure anymore, and that was the environment he didn't want to be in anymore. And that this is true of what other people got. Making sure that your environments are not stressful, making sure your teams are engaged, making sure that they're involved in what you're doing and involved in the decisions that you're making. Slightly longer term, And we've seen this an awful lot. We've spoken about, offshoring and all of that kind of stuff in the past. And offshoring, is still going to happen. Unfortunately, accountants are still thinking that it's a good thing. When it's driven by
offshoring, just for those, so that's whereby you're
picking up your department and you're passing it over to somebody else to manage for you.
Yeah.
And if you've got if it's captive, it means that it's owned by your company.
Yeah.
If it's non-captive, it means it's being run by a third party. We're still going to get that. But I think it's going to be to a lesser extent. Organizations are looking more and more at automation. Last week alone, we had in the Chris Arness consulting side, last week alone, we had 2 organizations contacted us and said, can you help us with automatic direct debit and paperless direct debit, right? So things like that. So we're going to be putting something out very shortly. We've got somebody that we work with regularly, and she's one of our network of consultants. So we're going to be doing some stuff around that to sort of. So we'll be doing a Zoom on that soon, to sort of help people sort of understand what they need to do, because direct debits was what's the problem? It was just one of those things until lockdown happened.
Yeah.
So and the other thing I think we've as credit managers, we've got to be a lot more aware of the rest of our organization. We've got to be a lot more aware of what AP does, right? We've seen a lot of organizations moving from just an AR manager and a credit manager and accounts receivable manager, becoming both AR and AP. Okay. We've got 2 or 3 organizations literally in as many weeks have said, I've just taken up responsibility for AP as well.
Right. Okay.
Right. So we've been working very closely with the AP Association, developing their quality accreditation program, and working with them. We're actually going to be running some Zoom sessions jointly with them. So what's the challenges for AP? What's the challenges for AR? And we're going to be running joint best practice sessions. Hopefully they won't end up fighting. But it'll be 2 sides. They're 2 sides of the same coin, really. Mm-hmm. So what we're trying to do is sort of get credit managers to think more about AP, because that's becoming much more important, and understanding your customers' AP as well. And that's something that we generally don't do particularly well as credit managers. We just we push stuff out there. We don't try and understand the customer as well as perhaps we should. And there's a whole load of pressures and issues around AP that I didn't know about a year ago that I do know about now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. So it's I didn't know that AP good process managed AP departments don't like copy invoices, right? Because it leads to duplicate payments.
Yeah.
Right? And duplicate payments are the bane of an AP manager.
Yeah. And then you don't have to pay them back anyway. Yeah.
Exactly. And fraud is a massive issue for large organizations in AP.
Yeah.
Massive, much more so than credit. Because submitting an invoice and just hoping that the company will just pay it, which happens a lot. So fraud and stuff like that is and the use of organizations like yourself for credit reports, but on the other side of it, looking at suppliers rather than looking at customers. And that's something that's going to be a lot more important going forward. So I think that we've got to learn more and become and our scope for credit has got to expand for us to survive. Alternatively, we're just going to end up in some finance transactions department, and it will be put under some accountant somewhere. God help us, because they're just going to look at it from a cost perspective, and not from a customer perspective, which is what we do as credit managers. So we have to be much more engaged in some of these decisions now, I think, than we were before. If credit is going to continue to be as important in business as we would like it to be.
Yeah, exactly. Brilliant, Chris. Well, thank you ever so much for that wonderful insight. I've enjoyed spending the time with you today, and I'm sure that people will enjoy listening to your advice and your feedback, and also collating what you've learned yourself as well over the months of doing the 11s and the CICM stuff. So thank you for sharing that with us. Like I say, I will make sure that the link to the playbook and the 11s is on the YouTube channel, but also for those that are listening, please feel free to contact Chris via LinkedIn, and be interested to see what comes of it, and whether there's any feedback that comes directly to you, Chris. So,
okay, yeah, I'll let you know.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks again for sharing the time, and see you soon.
You're very welcome. Cheers, Dan. Thanks very much for having me.
Pleasure.